Hey everybody, how you doing? It's Rogway here, and I'm back with another tutorial. And today we are looking at selections in Photoshop. This is an update to an old tutorial that I used to do, but now with the new version of Photoshop, they've changed things a little bit, so it's due for an update. Anyways, if you're new to Photoshop, hopefully this will help you kind of get started in Photoshop so you can kind of get your bearings and learn how to use it. So just follow along. First of all, I'm on a Mac here, but the process is pretty similar on a PC. We're going to open up Photoshop. On the Mac, the way you could do that is you could either find it in the dock, and if it's not there, you can go up to the top right to this magnifying glass, and you can do a search for Photoshop and find it there. So I'm going to just get that opened up. And when it loads, you're going to see this interface on sort of the starting page of Photoshop. Okay, so this is where the starting, sort of where we start when we open up Photoshop. We could make a new file from here, we could open up a file, we could do all sorts of things, but we're going to actually refer to the folder that I've created here for the tutorial, where I have a few different pictures. So I have like a dystopian looking room, I have Family Feud, I got Steve Harvey, I got some clouds with a highway, I got a really nice car, and I got a poster. And so we're going to look at how we can use selections to put pictures together in Photoshop. Now obviously this is just a beginner tutorial. We can go way more with this, way more advanced. I'm going to show you 3 different ways to make selections and how selections work, and hopefully you can follow along without any issues. First one we're going to open up is, we're going to open up Steve Harvey first. And so you could just drop it into Photoshop. I don't really recommend doing it that way, just because it's going to create a smart object. Instead, what I recommend you do is you take this picture and you drop it onto the Photoshop icon, or you right click it and you say open with Photoshop. That is the correct way to do it. Okay. And now you're going to see that our Photoshop changes the way that it looks. We are now in the editor mode. We've got all of our tools along the left side. We got our canvas, which is here, and we've got some palettes and menus on the right hand side that we basically we can customize to whatever we want. The most important one that we want to look at is layers. Okay, layers is down here, and you're going to see the layers palette. This should always be visible somewhere, even if you customize your layout. Layers are very, very important. Layers is sort of the foundation, or the, I guess, you need to know layers in order to work with Photoshop. Basically, they're like clear pieces of plastic or layers, I don't know how else to describe them, where they're basically stacked up on top of each other, where we can make new compositions, or we can edit our pictures or whatever. And basically the whole point of having layers is so that you can keep stuff nicely organized and they're not going to ruin the other layers underneath or above them. Hopefully that makes sense. So we're on Steve Harvey's picture here, and you can see the little thumbnail down there, so we know that we're on that picture. And right now it's just a default called background, and we got a little lock. We'll talk about that after. What we want to do is we want to remove the green screen background. Okay, and so the first selection tool we're going to look at is located under the 3rd tool down. These selection tools, you know what, let's go to the 4th one down. We can get to those ones after maybe. Go to the 4th one down. These 3 tools are pretty interesting the way that they work. Each one is going to select objects based on either a selection or a color. And so quick selection mode, for example, we can go to that one. By the way you get to that menu is by clicking and holding. Any icon in your menu that has this little down arrow next to it means that there's more tools hidden inside. Okay, very important, because again, Photoshop has a lot of tools and that's their way of organizing it. So we'll look at, let's do object selection. So if I do a basically create a block over Steve Harvey, we're telling Photoshop that we want to select the object within that block. And you'll see it does a pretty good job of creating a selection. And the way you can tell is because if you look at around Steve Harvey, you're going to see these little marching ants, we call them. That is your selection. That is what it selected. And you'll see that Steve Harvey is selected. He's got a selection all around him. Let's just deselect that for a second. And the way we would do that on the Mac is Command D. On the PC, it would be Control D. And let's look at another tool. This one is the Quick Selection tool. So let's say the Object Selection tool didn't do a great job. We can use Quick Selection tool to start painting in areas that we want to select. And you'll notice that it figured out that we're trying to select the green. And you'll notice now that that becomes selected. Okay, so that's another way to do it, because you can paint over objects and it checks for similar objects and tries to be smart to figure out what you're trying to select. Okay, once again, let's hit Command D. The last one we're going to look at is Magic Wand. Now, Magic Wand works by checking the color that you're selecting. And there's a couple of choices here that I suggest you change. Up at the top here, make sure that this second block is turned on, and that's called Add to Selection. So that means every time you click, you're going to add on to your previous selection. The tolerance, which is over here, is how similar the colors have to be in order to become selected. So we're just going to start clicking in the green. You're going to see that it's basically selecting the green. It does it in a couple of passes until it has all the green selected. Exactly, or very, very similar to the Quick Selection tool, did basically the same sort of job. Okay, now you'll notice with these two selection modes there is a problem, and the problem is right now we don't actually have Steve selected. What we have is the background selected. So we want to actually reverse our selection so that it goes on to Steve instead. So we're going to go up to Select at the very top here. And we're going to inverse our selection, and that is going to put our selection onto Steve. All right, so now we got our selection. Looks great. Now we're going to figure out what picture we're going to put him into. So I'm just going to take Photoshop. I'm going to slide it out of the way, and I'm going to open the Family Feud file. Again, you can right-click and open with, or you can drag it to the icon. Just don't drop it into Photoshop, because that is not good. It ends up with a file that makes it a little harder to use. So we're going to just open with, we're going to choose Photoshop. So there's the background that we want him to go into. You'll notice that Photoshop replaces the picture we were working on before, but if you look at the top, it's not actually gone. It's just a tab, just like in a browser, where you can switch between the two pictures, and you can see which one you were working on previously. It's still there. You didn't lose it. All right, so now we got to get Steve over to the Family Feud file. Okay. I want to show you guys something before we go any further. If I go Select Inverse, and now I'm on the background, let's say I wanted to have a clear background behind Steve. If I hit Delete on the keyboard, you will see that it's going to ask you what you want to fill it with. In this case, we don't want to fill it with anything, so we're going to hit Cancel. What we have to do if we want to delete a background is we have to unlock the layer. So you remember this lock I was talking about earlier? We have to click that, and then we can hit delete. And now you'll see this checkerboard pattern. And the checkerboard pattern is pretty universal, I would say. You'll see that on Google as well. It basically means that that area is clear. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go Select Inverse again. So now we are on Steve. And now we're going to look at the Move tool, which is this first tool right here. And with that selected, we can move Steve around. Now, very important, your cursor needs to be over top of Steve and not on the background, or else it won't actually select him. So here's a tricky little thing. We got a couple options here. We could just go Edit and Copy. We could do that and then paste him into the other one. Or we could move him like this by holding the mouse down and not letting go. We're still holding it down. We went over the tab. We're not going to let go until we're over top of this picture. Now his picture becomes part of this one, And we can use these little blocks to scale him down to make him bigger or smaller. If you don't see those blocks, you can press Command T or Control T and they should show up. But basically now we can move him where we want. Let's say right there. I don't know. Maybe this is like an ad that you're going to get in, it's going to show up on a game or something to download the new Family Feud 2 game. I don't know. But anyways, once you're done scaling it, just hit Enter or Return on the keyboard and you'll see it goes nice and clear. Now, you'll notice that Photoshop actually created a layer for us automatically right there with Steve on there. And we got the background underneath, so it has kept them separate. And as we add more stuff, we would have more and more layers on top. If we want to get fancy and organized, what we could do is also name our layers. So you see right now it says Layer 1. We just double click that, and we could call it Steve, like that, and hit Enter. And now you've got a name for that layer, all right, which makes a little more sense. So we're done with the first one. This is all we want to do with this. We're going to save it. Let me show you how to save in Photoshop. I'm just going to close, sorry I went a little faster. I'm going to close this tab by hitting the little X. Don't save, we don't need that one, we need this one. We're going to go up here to File. We're going to go Save As. And when you first come into Photoshop, it's probably going to look something like this. Kind of a small window. It's kind of hard to tell where it's going. You could choose from this drop down, you could choose Desktop. Probably an easier way to do it is to click this little down arrow. And when you get that down arrow clicked, you're going to see all of your folders on the left, like your desktop and your downloads and all that stuff. So if I choose Desktop, I could just save it onto the desktop where I should find it pretty easily, or I can click the little new folder button at the bottom and make a folder for this. I'll just call this Selections Tutorial and hit Create. So what that did is it automatically made a folder on the desktop, and now we can just hit Save. This compatibility window that comes up, you can just hit OK. And now we've got our file saved. So that's the first option. Again, that is the magic wand and quick select and object select. Really useful. 3 tools there for making selections. Let's move on to the next one. So we're going to actually close this tab now. For the next one, we got a little bit more of a tricky object. We got the car, okay? We're going to open that with Photoshop. Now, the reason this object is a little bit trickier is because it has this sort of lined background behind it. It's got a ground that's a different color. It's got a shadow. It's got a lot of different things where using color as a selection or trying to use object select, it might work. But it's got a couple things that are really going to sort of confuse it. So one thing I want to show you is, and again, I should have shown this on the last one, but if you're noticing that your artwork is a little small, you've got a couple options. You can do Command or Control 0, and that will enlarge the canvas to your screen size. You've also got this magnifying glass down here that you can use to zoom in and zoom out of your work, okay? And if you're ever zoomed in to the point like this where you're working on your work and you need to get back, you can press Command 0 to go back. Or if you're zoomed in, you want to just kind of look around the picture, you could hold the space bar and just grab the page and move around the page, okay? So that is really handy. Press Command 0. Photoshop comes with a great tool that is pretty intelligent as long as there's one object in the picture. And so if we go up to Select here and we go to Subject, so select Subject, it's going to try to figure out what we're trying to select in this picture. And you will notice that it does a pretty decent job of figuring out that the car is what we want to pick. Now you will notice, however, as with anything that's automatic, if I zoom in, you will see that parts of the car like this, mirror got missed. Part of the back of the car got missed. Okay, so parts did not get selected properly. So I'm going to show you how you can fix that. What we're going to do is at the very bottom of our tools, you're going to see this little rectangular donut looking tool. It's called Quick Mask Mode. And the shortcut for this is just to press Q on your keyboard. But when you do that, you're going to see that everything that is not selected will become red. And everything that is selected will basically just show the picture as it is. You'll notice the little pieces that are missing. So what we can do is with the magnifying glass, we can zoom in on those pieces and we can switch to our brush tool. Shortcut is B. It looks like a brush. It's not hard to miss. And the way that the brush tool works in quick mask mode is you have two options. You can use any, well, more than two options, but you can use any shade of gray. However, the easiest way to use this is, easiest way to understand this is you'll have black and white by default. And so black is basically taking away from the selection. So it's like turning off the lights. If you click this little arrow here and switch it to white, or you can press X on the keyboard, you can do that quickly that way too, you can bring stuff back, okay? And you'll notice how I'm undoing things, right? I do it really quick. I'm just doing Command Z or Control Z. That's the undo. You'll also notice that our brush, at least mine, is pretty soft. So if I want to change the brush hardness and how soft or hard it is, under this little menu right here at the top, hit the little down arrow. There's a slider for how hard your brush is. I'm going to set it to about 80%. And I'm going to close it off just by clicking that little arrow again. Or I can click in the stage. Or on the canvas, I mean, sorry. Let's say you want to change your brush size. If you look on your keyboard, you will see the P key, like P for pony. To the right of the P key, you'll see two brackets. Those brackets will allow you to change your brush size quickly. So you can change between a bigger brush or a smaller brush. And now with the white brush, with the white color, we can bring back those parts that it missed. Okay, so I just painted that part of the mirror. If I hold the space bar, I can slide over to the back here. And I'm not going to go perfect. I'm just going to fix up some of the parts it missed. And I can paint that part back. All right. Now, like I said, if let's say it picked a little, let's say it picked this, and we didn't want that. All we would do is switch to black, okay, by either pressing X or clicking this arrow, and we could paint that back out so that it's no longer selected. All right, hopefully that makes sense. So I'm just kind of cleaning it up a little bit. Obviously, the Photoshop will not do a perfect job by default, but it does a decent job. Okay. Now, once you're happy with it, I'm going to press Command 0. I'm going to go back to the full view. To get that to turn back into a selection, we have to click that little rectangular donut that we started with. And when we click that, it will go back into a selection. And so what I want to do is I want to actually put that picture into this one, Highway in the Clouds. And so I'm going to open that one with Photoshop. It'll make a tab. And just like before, we're going to drag it, or we could copy and paste it, and we're going to drop it into here on the road. Something like that. Now, if you don't like the size, you can do Command T, you can adjust it, make it bigger, smaller, whatever makes you happy. Now, you'll notice that it looks very fake. Okay, it looks like it's just been dropped in there from another picture, obviously because it has. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a little effect to this, okay? So with the car layer selected, let me just pull my Photoshop up so you can actually see this. We have a little button at the bottom of the layers palette that is called FX. And so these are where your layer styles are held. So let's say we want to put a little bit of a drop shadow under the car so it looks a little bit better. We can click that, and from this menu that drops down or opens up, we're going to choose drop shadow. You might have to scroll down a little bit to see it. I'm going to click that. This window looks very intimidating, but it's not so bad. First thing is how transparent, this opacity sliders, how transparent is the shadow? This angle is which way is the light coming from? So, you know, is it coming from the left or the right or the top, or like where is it coming from? I'm just going to leave it at 90 or close enough. Distance is how far the shadow is from the vehicle. And you can see it's updating behind us here. As long as you got preview turned on here, then you'll be able to see what you're doing. Okay. Spread is how far does the shadow spread out from where it started. And size is how soft the shadow is. Okay. So by playing with these values, it's not going to be perfect, obviously, but we can get sort of a semi-realistic look by adding a drop shadow to the car. And we're going to hit OK. Once we're happy with that, we're not going to worry about quality. That's, it's not important in this case. Hit OK. And now you can see that that car has a bit of a shadow under it, and it looks less photoshopped. It's still photoshopped, but it's less photoshopped. One thing I wanted to share with you guys also before we move on to the next one is that you can reorder your layers just by dragging it above or below different layers. You'll notice here I've got a layer called Sunset. That's what gives it that sort of orangey look. And if I drag it below, you'll see that the car will change from its original colors to this sunset filter that I've added. Okay, so again, you can reorder layers however you want. We're going to save this one. File, save as, once again, find your folder on the desktop, selections tutorial. I'm just going to hit save. I know I'm going fast, but it's the same as last time. And we're going to hit OK. Now let's do the last one. Last one should be quick. I'm just going to close both of these. We don't need them anymore. For this one, we've got a room, a dystopian room. We're going to open that with Photoshop. There it is. And we have a poster that we want to put into it called Peace. So we're going to open that with Photoshop as well. So we've got the poster that we want. We got the room that we want to put it into. And now we're going to see that if we want to put something that's flat onto something that has perspective like a wall, it's not going to look that great, sort of by default. So I'm going to show you how to fix that. So we're on the poster. We're going to unlock it. We're going to take the move tool, which is the first tool. We're going to drag it, and we are going to drop it into the dystopian room, not the dystopian world. And we're going to just scale it down a little bit. Let's say I want it on this wall. Now you see the problem. We have a poster, but it does not match the perspective of the room at all. Okay, so we're going to fix that. I'm going to show you how. This is another common issue where if you're putting stuff in from other sources, you may have to distort it a bit or make it work for the picture you're putting into. You might even have to flip it. In this case, it wouldn't work because the text would be backwards. But here's how we can do this. We're going to go to Edit. And you'll notice that I didn't even have to do a selection here because it's already going to be rectangular. We don't need to select anything. We're going to go to Edit. We're going to go Transform. And we're going to go to Distort. What Distort will let you do is it'll let you grab individual corners of that poster. And now you can match the angle of the wall like that. Okay, which is kind of cool. Okay, it's definitely looking better than it was. Hit Enter or Return, and it will finalize that. But you'll notice that the colors don't really match the scene. It's a little too vibrant. It doesn't really look like it belongs here. It's looking really, really bright. So we're going to get more into this in our next tutorial, but one of the great features of Photoshop is it has the option of blending modes, which is right here. So if you look at your layers, this is where the poster is right now. It's on layer 1. Right above it, you have this thing that says normal right now. Now, the way blending modes work is they blend the layers together. So let me just show you how this works. If I change it from normal to something like multiply, now that poster is actually blending with the color under the layer, with the layer below. So you can experiment here. You can choose all sorts of different looks, and you're going to probably find one that you like or that you think looks good, and blending modes are awesome. There's so much you can do with them. We're going to get more into those ones later. But for now, I'm just going to leave it on multiply, and I'm happy with that. It looks like it belongs in the scene a heck of a lot more than it did when I just had it on normal. And obviously with that distortion, it also looks like it fits the scene much, much better. So once again, we're going to save that. That was a real quick one. We're going to go save as, desktop selection tutorial, save. And that's it for today. Again, we're going to be using selections a lot, and so it's very important that you know some of the ways of making selections. There are many, many, many more in Photoshop. These are just some of the more common ones that'll get you sort of through at least most of the stuff we'll be doing anyways. So anyways, make sure you save your stuff, and make sure to follow me in the next one. Thanks for watching.